"I'm sorry, Miss Patel, but your application for the Crescent Gardens Community has been denied," said Barbara Whitfield, her pearl necklace gleaming under the chandelier light of the Neighborhood Association's meeting room. Her smile was practiced, her eyes cold. "Our community has certain standards that we uphold." I maintained my professional composure, though my fingers tightened around my portfolio. At 38, I had built Patel Tech Solutions from a one-woman operation into a thriving tech company with over 200 employees. I'd finally saved enough to buy my dream home in the historic Crescent Gardens neighborhood, a collection of Victorian and craftsman houses surrounding a beautiful shared garden space. "I've purchased the Montgomery property," I replied evenly. "The house meets all historical preservation requirements. My renovation plans have been approved by the city's historical committee." Robert Cunningham, the association president, cleared his throat. "The property purchase is one thing, Miss Patel. Community membership is quite another. Without association approval, you won't have access to the gardens, the community pool, or any of our events." I looked around the room at the 7 board members. All white, all over 60, all looking at me with the same expression, like I was an intrusion in their carefully curated world. "May I ask on what grounds my application was rejected?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We're simply preserving the character of the neighborhood," Barbara replied. "People who understand our traditions, our way of life. Perhaps one of the newer developments across town would be more suitable." The implication was clear. For a century, the Crescent Gardens community had remained exclusively white, despite the changing demographics of our city. My friend Elena Vasquez, a prominent surgeon, had faced the same rejection last year. So had the Okafor family, despite Chidi Okafor being the university's beloved basketball coach. As I drove home to my apartment, passing the beautiful house I'd purchased where I couldn't fully belong, I made a call to my lawyer, Sophia Chen. "It happened, just like you predicted," I said, putting the phone on speaker. "Discrimination dressed up as community standards," Sophia replied. "Did they put anything in writing?" They're too careful for that." Then we proceed with Plan B. "How soon can you meet?" 3 days later, I sat with Sophia in her office, reviewing documents. The Crescent Gardens Community Association is technically separate from property ownership, she explained. "But they control the shared spaces that make the neighborhood special. And they've been doing this for decades," I added. "Yes, but they've made a critical mistake," Sophia smiled. "The association itself is registered as a non-profit that owns the gardens, the pool, and the community building. And they've been mismanaging their finances for years." "How bad is it?" "They're 3 months away from bankruptcy. They've been keeping it quiet, using personal loans from board members to cover expenses. The properties they own need major repairs that they can't afford." I leaned back, thinking, "And no one outside the board knows?" "Not yet, but once word gets out, property values will plummet." I pulled out my tablet, showing Sophia my proposal. Then it's time to put my plan into action. Over the next month, I worked quietly, meeting with other rejected potential residents, Elena, the Okafors, and others who had faced similar discrimination. Each of them successful professionals, each denied membership for unspoken reasons. "We form our own association," I explained during our 4th meeting in Elena's home, Crescent Connected Life. "We pool our resources to purchase the gardens and facilities when the current association goes under." "Will they sell to us?" asked Chidi Okafor. "They won't know it's us," I replied. "My company specializes in secure digital infrastructure. We'll create a shell company for the purchase." "And then what?" Elena asked. "Then we create something better. A truly inclusive community that preserves the neighborhood's historical character while making it welcoming to everyone." Through a series of carefully structured transactions, we set our plan in motion. When the association's financial crisis finally became public knowledge, our shell company, Heritage Preservation Group, was ready with an offer to purchase all association assets. The day the board signed the papers, I watched from my car across the street. Barbara Whitfield emerged from the community building looking defeated, followed by Robert Cunningham angrily talking on his phone. None of them noticed me, just as they'd never noticed how their exclusivity had sown the seeds of their own downfall. 2 weeks later, Every homeowner in the Crescent Gardens received an invitation to a special meeting. As people filed into the community building, there were murmurs of confusion and concern. Many hadn't set foot in the building for months, avoiding the association's growing problems. I stood at the podium, watching recognition dawn on Barbara's and Robert's faces as I introduced myself. As you know, the previous association faced financial difficulties and sold its assets to Heritage Preservation Group. I began. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the actual owners. Crescent Connected Life, a new community association formed by current and future residents of this neighborhood. Elena, Chidi, and our other partners joined me at the front as I continued. We've purchased the gardens, the pool, and this building, and we have a new vision for our community. The screens behind me displayed our plans: restored gardens with accessibility features, a renovated pool, community events centered around cultural exchange, and a transparent financial structure. "This is outrageous," Robert shouted. "You tricked us." "No, Mr. Cunningham," I replied calmly. "We made a business decision to preserve and improve a struggling community. Your association was facing bankruptcy, and we prevented that." "And who exactly is going to join this new association?" Barbara demanded. A young couple raised their hands. "We will," said the woman. "We've lived here for 2 years and never felt welcome at association events." "Us too," called an elderly man with his husband beside him. One by one, over half the residents expressed support. Many had been silent for years, uncomfortable with the exclusionary practices but afraid to speak up. The transformation began immediately. The physical renovations were straightforward: fixing the deteriorating pool, upgrading the community building, making the gardens accessible to those with mobility issues. But the cultural shift was our true focus. We instituted transparent membership guidelines, community events that celebrated diversity, and educational programs about the neighborhood's complete history, including the parts that had been conveniently forgotten. 6 months later, we hosted our first Crescent Cultural Festival in the gardens. Food stalls from various traditions lined the paths. Local artists displayed their work, and children played together on the newly installed playground. I was arranging flowers at the welcome table when Barbara Whitfield approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. "My granddaughter," she began stiffly. "She's visiting for the summer. She saw the flyers about your children's art program and is interested." I smiled. "All children are welcome, Mrs. Whitfield. The program starts on Monday at 10 a.m. She nodded, something shifting in her expression. "The gardens look beautiful," she admitted. "Better than they have in years." "Thank you. We believe in preserving history while making room for new growth." As she walked away, I thought about what my father had always told me. Real change happens not when you win an argument, but when you create something so beautiful that people can't imagine going back to how things were before. A year after our takeover, we unveiled a new entrance sign to the gardens. The old bronze plaque listing past association presidents had been moved to our small museum of neighborhood history. In its place stood a simple stone marker: the Crescent Gardens, honoring our past by building our future together. That evening, I sat on my porch watching fireflies rise from the gardens. Elena joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "Remember when they said we'd destroy the character of the neighborhood?" she laughed. I gestured toward the gardens, where children were playing a twilight game of tag, their parents chatting on benches nearby. Elderly residents walked slowly along the illuminated paths, greeting new families who had recently moved in. "We didn't destroy anything," I said. "We just made room for more stories." The next morning, I had coffee in the community building with our planning committee. We were discussing a proposal for a neighborhood history project when Robert Cunningham appeared in the doorway. "Miss Patel," he said, his former confidence replaced with hesitation. "I've been thinking about your call for oral histories of the neighborhood." I invited him to join us, and he sat down carefully, like a man stepping onto unfamiliar ground. "My family has been here for 4 generations," he said. "I have photographs, letters, things that might be of interest to your project." "Our project, Mr. Cunningham," I corrected gently. "This is your community too." Something like shame flickered across his face, followed by resolution. "Yes," he said, "I'm beginning to see that." As we discussed the history project, I thought about how far we'd come. We hadn't just changed who could live in Crescent Gardens, we'd changed what it meant to live here. The old barriers were falling, not through confrontation, but through creation. The exclusive enclave was gone. In its place was something far more valuable, a true community, where belonging wasn't granted or denied by a select few, but created together, day by day. And in that creation, we all found home.